All right, I'm going to walk through starting the business card project. So we're going to begin by going to the run and debug and going ahead and running it. And hopefully this just works. I can then open a browser, and if I'd like it in side by side, I'll click side by side and I'll drag it over there. Perfect. All right. So the first card needs to be made with the box model. I'm going to go into my code. And if I look at the HTML, there's kind of a lot going on here. But we bring in our style sheet, that's style CSS. We bring in template. You're not going to touch that. That's what makes these cards look like cards. So there they are. And then we have the business cards. There's my name. You can go ahead and write your name there. Hopefully this auto refreshes. If it doesn't, you can hit refresh. And then each business card is one of these main sections that you'll see. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 landscape, and 2 portrait. All right. So when we write things on the card, we just want to write them inside of the main tags. And there we can see the main. And you'll notice there's a class. Each one has something like card1. So if I wanted to change card1, I'd create a rule for card1. And I could make something like background red, color white. And I can see that my rules are working. All right. So that's a start. Now, before I get into actually designing the card, ideally I have already an idea of what I want it to look like. So here's my drawing that I did on paper. This is for a fictional bike fitter. That's someone who helps you make sure your bike fits great. And there's my concept. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll shrink this down for now and pop into index. And each thing that's a section of the card, I'll want to put inside of its own tag. I'm going to recommend just using a simple div tag because it will not do any formatting for you, which is kind of handy. I'm actually going to get rid of that second window for now. All right, so here if I did div and then certified bike fitter, and then Phineas Bates, fitter to the pros, and then I've got my contact info. All right, so that's kind of everything content-wise. If I go ahead, go back to my side-by-side view, I can see that because I use divs, everything has sort of no space and just the default font on it. So it looks pretty straightforward. I guess the one thing I'm missing here is the image. I forgot that. I'm going to use this placeholder service for now for a placeholder image. And then I've got my little slogan, enjoy your ride. All right, so that would be all the content on the card. Obviously, it doesn't currently look right. So in order to style these elements, we're going to need to go to our style sheet. And we have a few options. We can use our child selector. So let me start with just that image. I can go card1 image, and I can say something like width is 1 inch. So now the image will be smaller. If we were to look at the template, these are, I think, something like 3 inches by 2.5 inches. Let's check. So if I made this 3 inches, 3.5, yeah, 3.5 fills the whole card. So we can think of the image in terms of its size in inches. You can also use pixels, which is a more web developer-like unit. All right, so now I have kind of anything I want to do is my choice. We'll notice certified and bike fitter are centered. So I can put a class on that, and we could name this for what it is. We could name it for what we're going to style. I'm going to try maybe something like top banner, because it's like the top banner of the card. And then I would come in here and I would make a rule called top banner. And I could say text align center. And now that's centered. The bike fitter is the big part. So I might call that the title. And I could come in there, go ahead and capitalize that, change up the font, and something like that. I used points for the fonts because I'm thinking of print. You can use pixels. Points and inches are traditional print units, so since this is a card, I'm just using them for kicks. And I had a little line there, so maybe I'd want the top banner to have a border bottom, something like that. All right. And it looks like I wanted this bike fitter. Well, that's good enough for now. We'll start with that. All right, actually I might want the whole thing in the same font, so I'm going to move that up there. All right, so this is a good example of just a very simple box model. If I were to look in the inspector and inspect this item, I can see these are just centered and they're just taking up all the space. So they look very simple. All right, next step is going to be creating this little block in here with my phone number and everything. And then next to it, the image. So using the box model, if I want to put things next to each other, the only way to do that is with inline block, which I'll go ahead and do. So if I were to come here, I've got this section, which is all this stuff, and then I've got the next section. So I'm going to go ahead and just name it left and right, because they're on the left and right. You can name them whatever makes sense to you. And I'm going to say left is going to be display inline block, and I'll need to divide the width. So let me look at this card. It looks like I did not have them even. I had them partial and partial. We might want to use some math to do this nicely. I'm just going to look up golden ratio as percentage. Yeah, 61.8%. We're going to see if that looks nice. It does, but they don't quite fit. So let's see. Make sure there's no margins. It's funny, that should add up to 100, right? But This often happens. I'm just going to go ahead and so now I'm wondering, why don't they fit? And here I can play in the inspector and see. Interesting. So 61. $37 do fit. So who knows? I'm just going to tweak them a little bit until they fit. All right, now they go side by side. Excellent. Next step, I probably want to put space around all of that. So actually what I might do is put the left and right inside of a bottom class. And now on the bottom class, we will add some padding. All right, pretty good. The one problem is the padding, well, it's pretty good. These don't actually fit in the space, so I probably want to tweak the spacing on those things and the fonts. But this definitely gets us started. I've now done a simple layout. I can look at it in the inspector, and everything is done just with simple like centering or with padding. So actually, well, let's go ahead and just futz with this a little bit more. If I were to go on the left side, and let's make the font size very small. Perfect. Now let's imagine, I didn't really draw this very well, but let's imagine I wanted some space between the fitter to the pros and then the contact information. So I can go ahead and add contact to the contact information, and maybe I put a margin top on it. Perfect. I used 1M, that's the unit for the width of a capital M, which is a nice unit that scales with my size. So now these guys are different, and I probably want the name to be bigger. So I'll go ahead and I'll say, let's make the name font weight bold. There we go. And maybe I want fitter to the pros to be italics. I can do that. Tagline. And maybe down here on enjoy the ride, I'll call that motto. So I could come in and say tagline, font style italic, motto. All right. Last thing I might want to do is play with some color. All right, and then I don't recommend using the named colors, but if you type a named color, you then get the chance to pick a color that you like. You can also go to a website like colors.co and just start generating some colors until you like one of them. So let's say that I liked this. I can copy that color and paste. Oops. Now, maybe I like this color to go with it. And I'll make the border. That actually looks terrible, so don't do that. But here, I'll use this one instead. Copy. Better. Alrighty. And then maybe I want to add a line or something. I could use maybe this one. And I'll say the left has a border right. Or maybe I wanted to put that actually on the right. Border left. All right, and if I wanted some spacing between the line and the image, I can use the same spacing. Oops. Pretty close, but now I need a little more space for this. So go ahead and make that into 40. Make that into 58. All right, there we go. And maybe I want them at 50, something like that. All right, there's a basic idea. I don't know that I actually like that line. Next thing I could do is generate the actual image of the rider, add those things, but this one is entirely done with a box model. Looks pretty good. I'm noticing there's no space on the top, so I'm going to add a little space up top there. And maybe I want that line to be wider. All right, so I could fiddle with this spacing until I'm happy with things. But you get the idea.